Professor Tov, thank you very much for joining us today to Institute for Hebrew Language and Literature, Belgrade, Serbia. It is a great honor to speak with you, especially after Scholar GPS has awarded you the status of highly ranked scholar and ranked you number one worldwide in biblical studies for your lifetime scholarly contributions. Professor Emanuel Tov, welcome.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Boker Tov.
Boker Tov. Professor Tov, what are you working on those days, and what is the main focus of your research at the moment?
Well, I'm working on textual criticism. I've been working on textual criticism, I don't want to say how long, but it's probably 60 years. My last book was published half a year ago. That was on the scribes of Qumran, 700 pages. But I'm not working on that anymore. I'm now writing a new book. I don't know yet what it will be called, but it is on the textual history of the Pentateuch, the Torah. I'm trying to find out what the textual origins of this book is. Not really the original text, but something like it. The earliest text that we can reach at with the aid of all the texts that we have at our disposal. And so it's an archaeological search, and it makes me very happy. And it's a combination of everything I've done so far on the Torah, a study of the Dead Sea Scrolls, study of the Septuagint, of the Samaritan Pentateuch, and much theoretical thinking. And I'm in the middle of it.
Very nice. In 2025, you published the revised second edition of your book, Scribal Practice and Approaches Reflected in the Text Found in the Judean Desert. What are the most important new ideas or discoveries that you included in this new edition compared to the first edition?
Well, that book was more or less a handbook. It's a handbook for anyone dealing with the small details of the scrolls. And it deals with all the technical details. What is a scroll and what did the scribes do? I try to enter into the mind of a scribe. What does a scribe do when he faces the text that he has to copy? Now, I had written the first edition in 2004, and so much has happened since that time. And for one thing, I had made quite a few mistakes in many details, and many things have changed. I've changed my ideas on the material. I don't call it leather anymore. And now it's more general skins or skin-based material. I stabilized my views on what I call the Qumran scribal practice. And even in that small area, there have come the criticisms, yes, but there have come many welcome supports, even from things that I would never dream about, but even from AI research, the project in the Netherlands. Someone working within that project found that 8 scrolls written by one and the same scribe, I think 7 of them wrote with the same type of spelling. And that's my scribal practice, the so-called Qumran scribal practice. So that was a welcome thing. Things, ideas like these, on which I changed my mind, that have come into this book. Yes. And then also I have a clearer idea what the different scrolls are that were found at Qumran, what types of scrolls were found at Qumran.
Okay, I understand. Very, very nice. In your recent study, Holy and Unholy Text of Hebrew Scripture, you discuss the different status of biblical text and antiquity. Could you explain this idea to our viewers and why it is important for understanding the Hebrew Bible?
Well, you point out a a recent paper, and it's interesting that sometimes my thinking advances through invitations to scholarly meetings. So there I was at that meeting, and I was invited to think about holy and unholy in the transmission of the text. And then I continued to think about the aspects of the transmission in the areas in which I'm an expert. Basically, it deals with the Masoretic text. The Masoretic text is the central text, what we conceive of as the central text of the Hebrew Bible. It was not always the central text. Now we open the Hebrew Bible. It's this Bible. This is the Masoretic text. Oh, I should open the Hebrew side, and you have the same in your office.
Yeah.
Yes, it's born, and yes. And this is our central text, and it was the central text of the Jewish people from when? Definitely from the 1st century of the Common Era. Also, already earlier from the 1st century before the Common Era. Now, what I wrote in this paper, what was the great innovation of this text? Because at Qumran we find all kinds of texts, not the Masoretic text pure. What is the Masoretic text? The Masoretic text is the text that we have in the Middle Ages. The same text as we have in the Middle Ages was found among the Judean desert texts, but not at Qumran, in other sites in the Judean desert, in Wadi Morabat, Nachal Cheber, and on top of the Masada. These were different kinds of Jews. If I say very religious Jews, very difficult word, because also the ones at Qumran were very religious, but they were religious in a different way. The ones at Masada, they only had one text, the Masoretic text, or we now call it Proto-Masoretic text, and the same text also in Murabat, etc. So we see in Qumran many texts, but not the Masoretic text. The other places in the Judean desert, only the Proto-Masoretic text. Now, I think about the whole transmission of the biblical text, and I think about the great innovation of this Masoretic text. What's the difference between the Masoretic tradition and all the other texts? The difference is that the Masoretic text started a new principle. The new principle was not to insert any change. Any change from what? From the text of a previous generation, and from the generation there before that, and before that. It was a holy text. It was a holy text for everyone. But for the people who created and preserved the Masoretic text, that was their principle. The Masoretic text was not always so precise, but from a certain point onwards, it was very, very precise. And now I focus on the Torah, and there they preserve certain ancient features. They even preserved the little dots. And this was like a revolution. That's the holy aspect of the Masoretic text. And this I understood in the recent years more than I understood this later. Now, in retrospect, it was only one text in ancient Israel among many texts. But later on, it became the main text. But that's only a historical coincidence, because all the other texts were not sponsored by any group in Israel anymore. The Qumran people were dead. The Samaritans had their texts, but they were not Jewish anymore. And the texts that were behind the Septuagint were also not Jewish anymore. They came to the Christian corner. So only what this Masoretic text stood for, that became the main text, and it was adapted by the rabbis. So this is what happened in Judaism, and we see everything in the wrong light. We think this was the main text from the very beginning. It was not the main text from the beginning.
I understand. Thank you. In another recent study, scribal habits of the Aramaic Qumran text, you examine the habits of the scribes who copied the Aramaic scrolls. What can those scribal habits tell us about the people who produced the manuscripts?
Yes. What's your remark or question?
My question is, after research in scribal habits of the Aramaic Qumran text, this is the research work from 2020. Your research work from 2025. What you do you find something new idea or something
Well, at Qumran, most of the Semitic texts are Hebrew, and they have many scribal systems, but these systems are more or less in common, and these were the systems of the period. The Aramaic systems were also the systems of the period. And I spoke about a few small details that stood out and had some things in common, small details that had some details in common with the Qumran scribal system. Very interesting. Doesn't change the overall picture. It's a small detail.
I understand. After so many years of studying the Dead Sea Scrolls, which question do you think are still waiting for convincing answers?
For writing,
For
research.
uh, convincing answers. What in the future researchers will need to answer to us something that you not find, for example.
Yes. Well, now, if you follow the news, this is world news. You probably also read about a new research project in the Netherlands led by Mladen Popovic.
Oh yes, I think from Croatia, from Balkan.
Yes. This is a very important project.
Yeah.
And it's not related to his previous project, which dealt with the analysis of the handwriting. But this is a technical, nature scientific investigation of the materials of, I don't know the details, but definitely of the material on which the scrolls were written. I don't know whether they also do ink analysis, but chemical analysis, yes. And so in independent analysis, they hope to find out where the scrolls were written. I'm, of course, am interested in some very specific details, whether the scrolls that I ascribe to the Qumran scribal system, whether they in some way are different from other scrolls. So this is one question, namely, with the aid of the natural sciences, can we come closer to answering some questions? We need a database in a yet unpublished article in a Festschrift for Ira Rabin, a small article by myself. I say we need such a database with all those data on technical data on each scroll. We don't have those data. This is very much needed. Because we are guessing, there are many things that we can know about links between scribes and doubts about whether this fragment belongs to this scroll or that scroll, we hope to find out. So these technical issues, I think, should be tackled in the future. About content matters, I can't put my finger right now on any. I think linguistic study of the scrolls being performed right now by a colleague at the Hebrew University. Linguistic studies will give us some answers, indeed. And I think continuous studies on the background of the scrolls compared with the Hebrew Bible, the New Testament, and other pieces of literature, intertestamental literature, will find more parallels between the scrolls and intertestamental literature. Another colleague writes much about the scrolls and the New Testament. This should continue. I think all these things together show that the research on the scrolls is still flourishing, and we haven't delved into the end of the research.
Yes, understand. Many of our viewers are university professors, researchers, and PhD students. As a member of the editorial board of the European Hebrew Journal, published by Center and Institute for Hebrew Language and Literature in Belgrade, Serbia, what message would you like to give to scholars who are thinking about submitting their work to the journal?
What advice would I have to give to colleagues when submitting a paper to the journal? Is that the question?
Yes.
Well, I would say in general, as much as possible, base your work on the original languages. That's the only thing I can say. On the Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek, rather than translations.
Thank you. And for the end of our interview, I want to ask you, if you were starting your academic career today, what would you do differently?
That's a very interesting question that I had not thought about. And the fact of the matter is that I've always been in luck. That's to say, our career is a career of what we call publish or perish. You know that phrase. If you don't publish, you don't succeed. So a young colleague at the time told me, you have to publish before you're 30. So I started publishing before I'm 30. It so happened one of my teachers helped me, and my first publications were in French on Qumran, I think, and on textual criticism. In fact, and then I've written a lot. I'm now, I think, close to 20 books, and I'm now approaching almost 400 research papers. And I've always been in luck at the Hebrew University. Really an excellent university where we have been allowed to teach topics of our expertise. So I was always able to develop papers together with my research interest and to develop a paper or more than a paper together with my teaching. So in the beginning, I was writing one paper and then another one. In later years, two at the same time, and in the last so many years, 5 or 6 at the same time. And when I write a paper, I make a draft and I put it aside. And after a month, I come back to the draft and I read it again, revise it, etc. And when I give I don't like to give the same lecture twice. And when I give a lecture, I usually publish my lecture. So, coming back to your question, basically, I'm afraid I have to say, maybe I have to think hard, but there's nothing that I can think of right now that I would do differently from what I did. And I've been in luck all the stages of promotion. Of course, I've been editor-in-chief of a large project of publishing the Dead Sea Scrolls. I've made friends, but I've made also several enemies. I've had troubles with these enemies, and there were difficult things. So, yes, I've not always been I've been diplomatic, but I've not always been diplomatic. So, in certain situations, I would have. I think yes, in certain situations, without giving details, I would have. Yeah, I would have changed in my next life. I would have made different decisions, and I would have taken upon myself a certain research project, even if I didn't like it, and changed the research, the line of the research project. So I would have taken it because that would have been the best thing to do, and rather than declining it as I did. So yes, I would have done the same in my career, but in certain details, I would have done it differently. It's not. It's a little vague answer.
Yeah. But before this interview, I think about your name and your surname because I'm small researcher in biblical onomastics, and if your name is Emmanuel, and that's meaning the God is with us, and if your surname is Tov, that mean good. It was very easy to you to be the best in the world in Dead Sea Scrolls because your name and surname.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes. Okay, Professor Emanuel Tov, thank you, תודה רבה, for this very, very nice interview. And I hope in future, when you will publish a new book, we can make another interview if you will be interested.
Thank you very much. תודה רבה.
תודה רבה.